Those visuals actually are from the protest, from our next story of what's going on in Niger State in Nigeria early this morning. Mostly women, but a lot of residents in Niger State took to the streets to protest the cost of living. The Niger State capital was flooded the street to protest that rising cost of living in the state. I must add, not just in Niger State, obviously, it's a common phenomenon in the country, Nigeria as a whole. The crowd, which was mostly women, blocked the Kahungu axis of Mina Bida Road in the Niger State capital, protesting against hunger and high cost of living. The women carrying placards with the inscription, "No food, we are dying of hunger," demand a better condition of living and reduction in cost of living for the citizens. They accuse political office holders of insensitivity to their plight, even as they lament inability to feed even once in a day. Let's delve into this now with Mr. Ayodiji Ebo. Mr. Ebo, good afternoon. Thank you so much, MD of Optimus by AfriInvest, for joining us this afternoon. So does this come as a surprise? Because I don't know if I've reported a protest that is for cost of living. I know I've reported in the UK and in Europe, but not in Nigeria. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, thanks. It may look new, but I don't think it's coming as a surprise because if we look at reality of what is happening on ground, people are really suffering. And when you look at, in terms of cost of living, is really high. And the income is not increasing. Production is not increasing. Especially look at the rural areas where ethnic crisis, insecurity have been taking over those areas. That means that the source of their livelihood or income is also being squeezed. And as a result, it's really going to put them in a very, very serious or precarious situation. So what we are seeing is not a surprise. Yeah, some might have taken to the streets to protest this, but people are also protesting internally because the resources or the income you earn is no longer sufficient, given when you look at from the exchange rate perspective, from food cost perspective, is no longer sufficient. So there's a need to intensify effort. Yes, government is trying its best to see what they can do to reduce that impact. But there's a need to intensify effort before it gets out of hand, because what this also leads to, if people cannot feed themselves, it has a very strong correlation with insecurity. And if insecurity is high, if we are trying to attract foreign portfolio investors, foreign direct investors, this may also drive them away or make them go to countries that have more relaxed environments. I think there's a need to look into this or intensify efforts to look into bringing down inflation.
Yes, so when we see the crowd, I mean, we're just showing it there. What efforts do you think can actually bring succor to them, especially at the short term? Because a reporter who was there, who covered this, said there was actually no leader. So that sounds like chaos. So if you have leaders, somebody leading the protest, you can talk to them and then they can talk to the crowd and say, okay, the government has promised this, the government has promised that. But in this case, if really there's no leader, nobody championing this, but just a group of people who have gotten so hungry and tired, then what do we give them? Does the government come out to say, let's give you food for 5 days? What do you see as a short-term succor?
So I think, assuming we have the correct data, things like this, what the immediate action is to have like palliatives in the immediate, which you should get to them, because what we currently have, and why we're always careful about talking about palliatives, is that we don't have the adequate record, and we're not sure it's getting to those that require them. So if that can be done in the immediate. Secondly, insecurity has to be taken care of. Most of these people may be farmers, and if they are not cultivating, what would they sell? How would they earn a living? So these are some of the things that within the medium to long time, if we can also take care of insecurity, that will help. The infrastructure system also needs to be worked on, because when we talk about food inflation almost at 34%, which is high, is part of what we pay for that is packed into that cost is the inefficiencies. So when you move goods from Kano by road to Lagos, the cost is significantly high than moving it through rail. Half of some of those items might have also been damaged, and as a result, the cost will be on the total truck. So if we need to work on those things, if we don't work on those things, I don't think that things may get out of hand. This is just from one area of the country. If we look at the reality of things, a lot of Nigerians are suffering, given what has happened within the last 1 or 2 years. Things are really tough. Cost of energy prices have gone really high. It's becoming unaffordable. Based on the exchange rate, real income is reducing, and even food is becoming unaffordable because the cost of food items are also increasing, and the income has continued to shrink on a day-by-day basis.
So, in the midst of dwindled government revenue and all of that, what do you see, what can be done, beginning with Niger State, but of course we know it's not restricted to Niger State. Perhaps the state government can have a word and things like that.
Okay, thanks. I think the first thing is that we should also work on our record keeping in terms of enumeration, so that if they are going to, so that palliatives can be sent. One, when you look at economies where palliatives are used, it propels demand. So if you are going to give, it's for short term, it doesn't solve the long term solution. If you are going to give this, let's say you distribute funds for them to feed, but you are also working on taking care of that long term solution of ensuring that they can begin to cater for themselves, that will really help. Because what we need now is to propel the demand, create the income, so that we can also propel demand within the economy. You know, most time when you give out these palliatives, if the demand for rice, for instance, is 1 million metric tons, but because there's now more money and people need to eat more, it will increase the demand and they will produce more. As a result, it creates additional employment and it takes more people off the streets. That's how, when you look at the value chain, that's how it works. But there's a lot that needs to be done to be able to take care of this.
All right, Mr. Ayodejepo, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. Managing Director, Optimus by Afrinvest.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.